Hey everyone, and welcome to another Victoria 2 modding lesson on the Iron Workshop. In this lesson, we'll learn how to create new provinces in Victoria 2. Now, before I start the lesson, I have to say, creating provinces in an older game like Victoria 2 is a bit more complicated than in newer Paradox games. So, while it seems like we only have 6 steps for this lesson, it is actually a bit more complex, which is also why this lesson will probably be a bit longer. But it is important to remember that once you do it a couple of times, the process becomes much more efficient and much quicker. So while it is a bit more complex, it is definitely something you can get used to and start creating provinces at a much faster pace after you've done it a couple of times. All right, enough rambling, let's roll the intro and get started. Our first step in creating a new province is to create a new mod file. Now I have a separate video for that, so go ahead and check that out in case you don't know how to create your own mod file. And once you've completed that step, we can move on to step number 2, creating our folder and file structures. Alright, so it's time to grab some folders and files that we will be editing in order to create our new provinces. So I'm going to open 2 folders. First of all, I'm going to open the Victoria 2 base folder, the folder of the base game. If you're using Steam, you can find that in Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Victoria 2. And I'm also going to open the folder of my new mod. So I'll go into the mod folder. And inside of here, I've already created a mod called New Provinces Mod. So I'm going to open that one. And now we will need to recreate some of the folders that we will be using for our new mod. So the first folder we'll need is obviously the map folder. So I will create that one inside of my mod folder. Just like that. The second folder we'll need is the history folder. So I'm going to create that one as well. And we'll also be needing the localization folder. So I'm going to create this one as well. And now we'll be grabbing some files from inside of these folders. So first of all, let's go into the map folder. And I'll also go into the map folder of the base game. And from here, we're going to grab the following files. First of all, we'll grab the continent file. Then we'll take the default.map file as well. We'll need definitions, positions, and we'll need provinces and region. So these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 files are the files that we will need in order to make our province work properly. So I'm going to copy them into my new mod, into the map folder of my new mod. And now we can go back. We'll now go into the localization folder. And in this folder, I'm just going to copy one of these CSV files. It can be this one, it can be this one, it doesn't really matter. I'll just grab this one, I'll put it in here, and I'm going to rename it to New Provinces. Obviously, if your mod is called by a different name, you can use that name whenever we rename our files. And now let's go into the history folder. And from the history folder, I will grab 2 additional folders. The first one is going to be provinces. So I'm going to recreate the provinces folder. And we will also need the pops folder. So I'm going to create this one inside of my mod as well. And from the pops folder, we will recreate the 1836 folder. Now, note that it's usually a good idea to apply what we're doing to both of these folders, but we will just focus on one, and once you understand how to do it for one of these, you can just repeat the process for the other folder as well. From here, I'm going to need to grab the files of one of these countries. Now, since we will be creating our new province in Sinai, in Egypt, so I'm going to grab the Egypt file. If you're doing this for a completely new country, then obviously grab the file of that country. So let's do it like this. I'm going to copy it over here, and then I'm going to go back into the history folder. Now from inside the provinces folder, I'm going to grab a file from the Africa folder, since I know that Egypt's files are in there. And I'll show you exactly how I know that. So I'm going to create the Africa folder in here. And from this folder, I'm just going to search for the tag of Egypt, the 3-letter designation that tells the game that Egypt is the country that the changes are being made on. So I'm going to type EGY. So once this list of files comes up, I'm just going to grab one of these files. I'm going to paste it in here, and we will make some changes to this file later on. All right, so we have the 3 folders that we needed. We have all the files that we need in order to create our new province. So let's go ahead to step number 3, drawing our new province. In step number 3, we're going to be drawing our new province, and we will also be assigning a unique ID to the province. This ID is the number by which the game will recognize our new province when the game is being played. So let's start by drawing our new province. I'm going to open the files that I've copied from the base game. We actually don't need the base game open anymore. I'm just going to focus on my new mod folder. And I'm going to go into map, and in here you should see a file called provinces.bmp. Now I'm going to edit this file in a program called paint.net. If you don't have paint.net, I will have a link to the download of paint.net in the description of this video. Alright, so I'm going to grab this provinces.bmp file, and I'm going to drag it into paint.net, and I'll click on open. Once the file has been opened, you will notice that the file opened upside down. That is fine. This doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your computer. This is just how these files are saved. In order to edit this file to make things easier on us, we'll have to go to image, and then we'll just flip it vertical like that. Okay, so now we can edit this file and start drawing our new provinces. So as I said, we're going to be adding a province in Sinai right here. Because as you can see in the south, in the Sinai here, there's a very large province. So I would like to divide it into 3 provinces at least. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select the pencil tool. It's very important that you use the pencil tool, since it will paint these individual pixels like that, instead of a paintbrush, which has a tendency to create gradients. Where a gradient is where you have one color smoothly transitioning into another color, and you definitely don't want that. In these files, every pixel needs to have its own unique color. You cannot mix these colors, otherwise things will not work. So we'll be using the pencil tool. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start painting my new province. Now I don't want it to be black, I actually want to change the color. You should see a color palette on the bottom left corner of the screen in here, but if you don't, you can just click here at the top right corner, and it will bring up this color circle. And from here you can select one of these colors. Now to make my province unique so that it stands out and I know what province I was working on, I'm going to select this yellow color. But you can use any of these colors. Inside of this color circle. So let's go to this yellow color like this, and I will just start painting like that. I usually like to paint the outskirts of the province, so to give it like a border, and then just fill everything on the inside. So let's do it like this. Just make sure to cover all of those pixels so that you don't have any isolated pixels of the previous province inside of your new province. So we'll just make sure that everything is filled. So once I finished painting my new province, I'm going to flip this picture back to be upside down as it was when we opened the file. So to do that, I'm going to go to Image, Flip Vertical, and then I'm going to go to File, Save. No need to change any of the parameters here. Just click on OK. and our new provinces file has been saved with our new province. Great. So this is basically all you need to do. The next thing that we need to do is to start editing the map files. So let's see what we need to do there. Our next step is to edit the files inside of the map folder. So we'll go one by one with these files and just edit all of them. We'll start with the default.map file. Now it is possible that your files might not be automatically associated with Notepad++. If that is the case, you can just right click, go to properties, and then opens with, just click on change. You should see Notepad++ in this list, but if you don't, go to more options and just select the appropriate program to open these files with. Once that's done, you can just double click and open these files. Another way to do it is to just open Notepad++ and then just drag these files into the program. That will also open them. All right, so let's see what we have here inside of the map file. The first line tells us how many provinces the game currently has. So since we took this file from the base game, this is the amount of provinces in the base game, -1. The number here always goes the amount of provinces plus 1. That means that currently in the game, there are 3,248 provinces, not 49. It is very important that you remember that, because the province that we are going to be creating now will be the province 3249. But because the number here always has to go plus 1, that means that we need to change this value to 3,250. Okay? If you don't do this, your new provinces will not work, and in fact your game will probably crash while loading. The next values are the values that designate the C provinces. Provinces that are meant for non-land units, right? C provinces. So these are all the provinces that are configured by the game to be. So if you're trying to add a province that is on the sea, you will need to put it in here as well. But that is not what we're doing right now, so we're not going to touch this list. The next thing that we need to do is to point this file to the correct definitions file. You see that there's a line here that says definitions. So the definitions file is a file that is a list of all the provinces and their color on the provinces file picture, the file that we edited here in paint.net. But this path will not work because currently it points to the vanilla game file. So we need to tell our mod that we need it to point to the file inside of our mod. So to do that, we'll need to type the following. Inside of these quotation marks, type the following: 2 dots / mod. Now the name of our mod folder. So in this case, it's going to be new provinces mod / map / definition.csv. Now it's quite important that the folder of your mod does not have spaces, because the game will not really know how to work with that. So if it has spaces, just make sure to rename it so that it either has these underlines or it has no spaces and is just one word. Alright, so this now tells the game that we are pointing to the definition.csv file inside of our mod, not the base game. Now, for some odd reason, and unfortunately when you mod Victoria 2, you will encounter all kinds of weird things, because that is just the way that it was with older Paradox games. Sometimes things would work a bit differently, maybe because some features were not completely moddable, some features were implemented to be only partially moddable, but this pointing to the definition file, you only need to do it for the definitions file. You don't need to do it for provinces and not for positions or terrain, so you can keep all of these other files as they are. You only need to do this for the definition file in here. Okay, so we're done editing this file, we can save it. And now let's go ahead and edit our next file, which will be continent. So let's open that. So this file contains all the continents that exist in the game. and all the provinces that are associated with that continent. So the game knows that province X belongs to continent Y. So since we've added our province in Sinai, and that is in the Africa continent, we'll need to put our new province ID in here. So our province number is 3249. So I'm going to search for Africa in here, and I'm just going to type this province in here at the end of this line. You can also type it in here, it doesn't really matter. Again, these files are not always very orderly and sometimes they look a bit chaotic. That is just something you have to get used to. So let's type our new province ID, 3249. So now the game knows that our new province has to work inside of the continent Africa. Obviously, if you've added your new province to another continent, make sure to put it inside the bracket of that continent. Great, so I'm going to save this file. Now let's go to the next file. We'll go with definition. So we talked about the definition file, and as you can see, what we have in here, we have the number of the province. We have our red, green, and blue color. I will explain in a moment what that means. And there's these two axes, which honestly, I'm not sure what they mean. One of these is for the name, although this is not the localization, this is not what will appear in the game. It's probably just a reference for developers and modders. And then you just have to put this X at the end. So we'll go to the end of this file, like this. And by the end of the file, you'll see that something weird is happening. You have these large numbers, and then these smaller numbers begin. So you need to add your province here after the last province, which is 3248. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to type 3249. Then I'm going to type this semicolon. And now we need the RGB value of our province. So let's go back into paint.net. And we have our color in here. And if I were to click on more, you would see that I would get this panel with R, G, and B. So these are the color codes that our new province is using. So we need to copy these codes into that file. So our R value, our red value, is 216. So we put it in here as the first because it's red, green, blue, right? Then a semicolon. Now let's see, the green value of our province is 255. Another semicolon. And the blue value of our province is 112. So I'll type it like this, semicolon. For reference, I will call it South Sinai. And we'll put in the ending semicolon and X. Excellent, and now we can save this file. Remember, just because you typed this in here, it doesn't mean that the localization of your province is complete. The name will still appear wrong in the game. We will take care of that a bit later. All right, let's go to the next file, which is the positions file. Now the position file, we will be editing it a bit differently. And this is something that I actually want to postpone a little bit, but we will get back to it. The next file that we need is the region file. So in the game, you have these regions, and the way that provinces are transferred are by regions, right? So when you demand a region in a war, what you get is a number of provinces that are part of that region. This is very similar to the concept of states in Hearthstone 4. Okay, so how can I know which region my new province belongs to? So you can take it into two directions. You can either create your new region, put your province in there, but because we've edited the Sinai, then it obviously needs to be part of the Sinai, which already has some provinces. So if I were to create a new region, that would be very simple. I would just go to the end of the file. I would call it something like Egypt 250, whatever, or I could actually call it something like Egypt underscore Sinai, and then just open a bracket and put the ID of my province in here, which I already have in the definition file. So like this, and this would be a region of its own that you could demand in a war. But again, I don't want to do that. I actually want to associate my new province to be part of an existing region. So to locate that region, I will need the number of a province that is already part of that region. So to do that, we will actually need to go into the game and locate that province. So let's see how to do that. Okay, so I've started the vanilla game with no mods, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go into a country into the game. So I created a province in Sinai. So the closest one would be this one. So I will need to know the ID number of this province. To find that out, I'm going to open the console. To open the console, you will need to press the tilde key on your keyboard. That is the key left to the number 1. So once you've pressed that, the console should open. And inside of the console, you need to type the following: prov ID, and press enter. Once you've done that, you'll see that province IDs are now shown in tooltip. And if I were to hover in here, I would see that the ID number of this province is 1757. So the region that this province is part of, which in this case is this one, Sinai, that province would be part of that region. So I can locate the region by knowing the ID of the province. And again, this doesn't really matter where you've added your province. If you want to incorporate it into an existing region, just find the province closest to it, and then you can locate the region. So let's go into the region file and locate province 1757. Okay, we're back in Notepad++, so I'm going to press Ctrl+F to bring up the find menu, and I'm going to type 1757 and click on find next. There's a region here called Egypt underscore 1746. So I'm just going to add my new province in here at the end. I'm going to give it a space. I'm going to copy the ID and I'm going to put it in here, and I'll just add a space in the end so that things look a bit nicer. And now our new province is part of this big region. Okay, we can now save this file. All right, so we've finished editing all the files except for the positions file. And that is the file that I actually want to keep to the end of this video, since it's important that you see how these things are affected in the game. For now, we can proceed to step number 5, editing our history files. Okay, so hopefully I haven't lost the majority of you up until this point. I know that this lesson is a bit long, but as I said, this is something that gets easier and easier the more you do it. So now we'll proceed with editing our history files. So let's open our mod folder and we'll go into the history folder. And in here, we'll first of all go to the provinces folder. And you've seen that previously we've copied a file to the Africa folder. So we'll go into that. And we took a file of a province. Now this is the ID of the province that we took. And obviously I want to rename it to the ID of our new province. So I'm going to copy the ID of our new province and I will just put it here at the start of the file. And of course, I will also change the name so that I know which province that is. We'll call it South Sinai, just like that. And we can open this file and see what we have inside. So there are 3 things that we can configure here. We can configure the owner, we can configure the controller, and we can add the core. So you can play around with these and actually give different tags, different countries, these things. If you want to see a list of all the tags in the game, you can go into Victoria 2, History, Countries, and in here you have the tags for all the countries. So let's just say that I wanted to give this territory to a country like China. So all you need to do is to type China and you will see this, and you will see these 3 letters. So that is the tag, the 3-letter designation for China, and you can do this for all other countries. Another thing that we can determine here is the life rating, which will obviously affect how immigrants are likely to move to this province and how easy it is to colonize, depending on the technologies that we have. There's also the trade goods, any goods that you have in this province. So you can find the list of all the trade goods inside of the common folder. So if we'll go here, there's a file called goods. If you open that one, you can see the goods in various categories like military goods, raw materials. So for example, we could put something like coal inside of our new province, and then it will have coal in the game. Great. You can also designate it as a colonial province. We can, for example, see this in an existing file that is already in the game. For example, in Canada, we have a lot of provinces that are not colonized. So if we were to open one of these, you will see that it has this designation colonial, and this is the level of the colony in there. So you can just copy this, put it in your file, and then this province will be a colonial province. Again, a lot of things you can do with this, but I'm not going to cover all of them right now. This will do for now. Excellent, so we now have our province file ready as well. Let's go back into our mod. And another file that we need to edit is the pops history file. So let's go into that. And in here, we already have our file for Egypt. So let's open that. And you see that in here we have all of these other provinces. These are the province ID numbers. In order to include my new province, I'm just going to take an entry for an existing one and then just change it. So let's go to the end of the file. Let's say I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to paste it. And obviously I'm going to change the number to the ID of my new province. So let's see, it's this one. So I'm going to put it in here. And in here you can change the amount of the pops that you have in this province. How many aristocrats you have in here, how many clergymen. If you want your province to be a non-colonized province, a province that is not owned by any country, you will just need to remove these 3 lines, and then this province will not be owned by any country. All right, so in here I can change the amount of each of these pops, how many there are in the province, and their culture and their religion. So these are very nice adjustments that you can do on the province level. Okay, so I will not change anything in here. Again, with your own province, you can play around with it and see how things work out. I'm just going to save it so that our province has some kind of population. Excellent. And now we're basically done editing our history files, and our province is actually ready to work in the game. So one of the last things that I want to do is to create localization for my province so that the game knows which name to put on that province when I'm viewing it in game. So to do that, I'm going to go into my localization folder. I'm going to open this new file that we've created. So the first thing we're going to be doing here, we're going to clean up this file. I'm going to remove all the lines in this file, like this. And now we'll need to type something very specific to let the game know how to properly put the localization for our new province. So the first thing we're going to type is prov in capital letters, P-R-O-V, just like that. Now we need the number, the ID of our new province. So as we have seen, it's this one. And now we're going to type a semicolon. Now the name that we want the game to show. So it'll be South Sinai. Now another semicolon and an X. So that takes care of the localization, and that is what the game will now know how to call the province with this number. Excellent. So now we're ready to proceed to our next step, testing our new province in the game. Now when we get to testing it, you will see that there's something wrong with it, but we will be fixing that in a couple of minutes. All right, so while our province is ready to be used, you might notice that there are some problems with it. So I started the game here with the mod enabled, of course. And as you can see, we do have our province in here. But first of all, this province overlaps its name with our new province. And the name of our new province is very, very small. So it's kind of hard to see. And this is the sort of things that the position file takes care of. So we're now going to be editing that file to make sure that these things are correct. You will notice that our localization is fine because the name of the province shows up in here and it shows up in here. Now, it is possible that for you, things might look a bit different. It is possible that you will not even see the name of your province in here. And that is because the game creates some kind of a random adjustment every time it creates the map. But that is fine. Once we edit the positions file, your name will always be properly displayed. So let's see how we can change the positions of this province. And this is something that you will have to do for every new province you create. In the description of this video, you will find a link to some Victoria 2 utilities. I will now show you how to download these utilities. So the link should take you here. If the link isn't working, please let me know in the comments. It's really hard for me to track all the links that I have in all my lessons. So there's no way for me to know if it's working or not. If you're watching this in 50 years, please let me know in the comments that the link isn't working, and I'll ask my hot male nurse to fix the link. Anyway, once you get in here, you will have a download button here in the upper right corner of the screen. So just go ahead and press that, then click on direct download. You might get this menu in here. You don't actually need to sign in, so you can close this and then just go ahead and click on direct download again. It will ask you where to save these new files. So just save them on the desktop or whatever is good for you. And once it's downloaded, you'll need to open this archive. Inside of the archive, there will be a folder called Victoria 2 Utilities. Now there are a lot of utilities here and a lot of them are quite useful, but we will only focus on one of them, a utility called Clausewitz Positions Editor. So make sure to extract that. Inside of the folder that you just extracted, you should see a file called positionseditor.jar. So go ahead and double click that. A window should pop up asking you to point the program to the map file. Now that is the map file that we edited before. And that is, of course, the map file inside of your mod folder. So make sure to point it to your mod and not to the base game map file. So that's what I'm going to do now. So here I am at the Victoria 2 folder that's located inside of Program Files, Steam, Steam Apps Common. And in here, I'll go into the mod folder. Then I'll choose my new mod, New Provinces mod. And then I'll select the map folder and double click the map file. Excellent. So once you've done that, make sure to select the game as Victoria 2, since this tool can also be used with other older Paradox games. And we'll click on OK. Now, before we actually start using the program, we will need to put some kind of data into the positions file so that the program can actually edit it. If you try to edit your province without having something in the positions file, that will not work. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to open my mod folder. I'll go to map. I'll open the positions file. And I'm just going to go and scroll to the end of the file. And I will just take the last entry in here, the West Magellan Strait, and I will make a copy of it, just like that. And I will just assign it the ID of my new province. As we know by now, it's 3249. And of course, it's called South Sinai. That's it. And I'm going to save this file. Now we can go ahead and open the position editor and actually edit these values in an easier way. So I'm going to open the position editor. And once it's open, the first thing that I recommend you to do is to drag it in here and then just press it to the top. That will make sure that it fits in your screen. Then you can scroll this list on the left and you should see your new province at the bottom of the list. You can highlight it and click Center on Province. That will highlight the province on the map and it will center the screen on it. Then you can double click. It will open this window where you can edit these values. So let's see what we have in here. First of all, we have the text position. Now the values that we put in here aren't really good because they refer to some other province that doesn't really have anything to do with these values. So what I like to do, I like to put 0 in all of these, like that. And then I'm just clicking on Edit and clicking where I want the text to be. For example, here. In terms of text scale, I can scale it. So for example, I can set it to 5. And I can also set the text rotation. So if I wanted to rotate a bit, I can do it like this, and that will put it like that. You will now see that the text scale has also updated. Now, obviously it's a bit too big, so I can put it to something like 3. Just click on Edit, Close, and now it looks much better. I can also move it around, once again, to reposition it a bit better. Something like this should do. And you will also need to put the values for all other sprites and units. So for example, where you want the units to show up. So if you want the unit to be here, just click on Edit, click in the province, and that is where the unit will be positioned. Same goes for the buildings, the factories. So if you want the factory to be in this portion, it can be in here. Building construction animation, where you want that. So that can be here. Military construction in here, a city, and all of those things. You also have separate positions for the various buildings. You can rotate these buildings and where to spawn the railway track. So if I want it in here, that will be here. So once you've done that, you can click on OK. And this information will be saved. It will ask you if you want to save. Yes, that is great. Now we also need to edit this province since, as we have seen, it didn't go so well. So let us click on it here and then double click here. And now we can just rotate this text a little bit to make sure that it fits a bit better. So for example, I can give it a rotation like this and close it. And of course, we will also need to move it around a little bit like that. So as you can see, now it looks much better. Again, I can click on OK, save this information, and we are basically done. Once you've done that, make sure to click on File, Save. That will save these new positions to the positions file. And now we can go into the game and see how things look. So now you see that the text is positioned much better for both of our affected provinces. And we're basically done. We do have the information for our pops, which of course you can play around with and change. We have our resource of coal. So things are looking quite good. So this is all the basic information you need to create new provinces. Now I realized that this was a bit exhausting and I'm sorry that the process is so complex. But back then, with older Paradox games, things were a bit more difficult. So that is all for this lesson. I hope you found it useful. I hope everything worked out for you. If you encountered any issues, please let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to help you. Give this video a like so that others can see how to create new provinces in Victoria 2. Subscribe to the channel to be notified on new modding lessons when they're posted. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.